Hello there. My name is John McAfee. I'm very excited to be part of the Ground Zero Summit Conference in one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and I'm sorry that I cannot be there in person. Visa delays have unfortunately made it impossible for my physical attendance, so we are making do with this video. However, I do hope to see you all next year. I would also like to help the Ground Zero Summit team for making this possible. And again, I am very glad to be addressing you today. I would like to start by telling you a little something about myself. I'm an American. I have been in technology, computer technology, since I was 23 years old, and that's the only job I have ever known. I started out working at NASA in the Goddard Space Institute in New York City, working on the first satellite program in data analysis. I've worked for UNIVAC, one of the major computer manufacturers in America in the late 60s and 70s. I worked at Lockheed on defense programs for a number of years. And I, of course, founded the McAfee antivirus company in 1986. Computer viruses were completely unknown before that time, and the first virus was created by a neighbor of yours, Pakistan. Two brothers in Lahore wrote the first virus called the Pakistani brain. I received a copy of it and did some analysis, and it became clear how they had done it. It was an exciting concept to me, a program able to replicate itself and infect other systems. At the same time, it occurred to me how I could prevent such things from happening, and I wrote the world's first antivirus program. From that, McAfee was born. I stayed with McAfee for a number of years and then left. The company became too large to be of much interest to me, and went off and founded Tribal Voice, which was the Internet's first instant messaging system. I sold that company in 1995 to CGMI for $17 million, and then helped work on Zone Labs, helped found that security company, which we sold to Checkpoint for around $400 million a couple of years later. I moved to Belize, hoping to retire and dabble in my hobbies, but it is unfortunately impossible for me to retire. Wherever I am, I'm always thinking of entrepreneurial ways to spend my time. And while in Belize, I founded a number of companies ranging from diving companies to airplane companies to finally a technology company in the bacteriological field, an antibacterial virus based on the new science of quorum sensing. I ran afoul of the Belizean government, a very corrupt place. I needed Belize because the plants along the jungle rivers provided unique anti-quorum sensing compounds that I needed access to. In any case, I left Belize, came back to America, and I'm now involved with a company called Future Tense, which I founded last year, to develop security and privacy products for everyone. And as you know, security and privacy is certainly one of our main concerns today. The Chinese are putting chips and microphones in everything from tea kettles to microwave ovens, and there's good reason for this, of course. We have a need to report back to headquarters any of our products that are malfunctioning and need assistance. Now, I'm not sure what a tea kettle needs in terms of remote technology, but in any case, we'll see more and more of this all the time. You may not be aware, but the smartphones that you're using now, both the Android or the iPhones, have applications that turn on your microphone or your camera at will, which you agree to when you click the I agree to the terms and conditions button. Many of these terms and conditions are many pages long, and none of us read them. However, I do. In America, we have, for example, an application put out by the Bank of America that in the fine print of the terms and conditions, you agree that they can turn on the camera on your phone anytime that they wish and send that picture back to Bank of America. Now, there's a good reason for this, of course. If you are a bank and someone logs in and empties their own bank account and then calls in and says, I didn't do it, the bank can then say, well, this picture of you actually doing it proves that you did it. I understand the need. However, this is only one example of thousands of applications that you can agree to the terms and conditions that will turn on your microphone, turn on your camera, and give the ability to spy on every one of your moves, every place that you go, everything that you do. If your phone is turned on, people can listen. If you're facing the phone, they can see. This is something that few people are aware of, and this in the future is going to be our largest risk. Because even in a company like Bank of America, you give the bank the authorization. Well, what is the bank? An employee of the bank is a representative of the bank. And a company with 50,000 employees, well, you know, some are going to be bored, some are going to be greedy, some are going to be unethical. Who knows who is looking at you, or when, or what they're doing with this information? So I think that the security field is moving into a new arena where it is not just hackers or criminals that we have to worry about, it's the average person working in companies that have the ability to look and see you at any time. I would like to speak briefly about the future of the Internet and the privacy and security needs of both governments and the individual. It should be clear to all of us that we have two aspects to our life as far as security and privacy are concerned. One is a public persona and the public aspect, things that we do not care if the world sees, knows, or watches. The other aspect is the private aspect. That is perhaps the communications between yourself and your wife or your husband, or your children, or your parents, or a brother and sister, or communications within a specific group, a fraternity, or a private organization, or anything that needs to be contained between one or two people or one or more people. This is our private life that we share with one, two, or more at our choice. And this is a necessity of us all getting along. We do not need to know all of our neighbors' secrets. When we do, this is when conflict begins. So we need privacy. We need the security to know that our private lives will not be seen, watched, or distributed publicly or to people we do not want to see. The second is a global geopolitical need. And we all understand that need. In China, for example, they have virtually locked down their population to receiving information that the government deems appropriate and not seeing information that the government deems inappropriate. And China is not unique. All countries are looking at or considering similar types of legislation or similar types of action. In America, for instance, there has been talk of limiting access outside the states to child pornography and weapons-making information. We all see the danger of this, certainly. If we limit something in one aspect, let's say weapons-making, then suddenly it can be interpreted in a far broader scheme. For example, maybe the chemistry involved in weapons-making will become illegal. And pretty soon, maybe all chemistry of a certain type may become illegal. This is the danger of governments. This is the danger of censorship. However, there is also a need for such in many cases. And so what will happen eventually is the balkanization or the separation of the Internet into various pieces where each is controlled by a country or a political organization or a region. We need to be very careful with this because the Internet now is one of the greatest sources of knowledge ever conceived, and it is growing by leaps and bounds. And without access to the Internet, we would not have what we have today, the ability to quickly choose a direction, a path, a procedure. The second aspect of privacy is for the individual is much more concerning to me because it is much more difficult to secure. I mentioned earlier that in some cases appliances are showing up with microphones in them or even cameras, and perhaps good reasons. Nevertheless, these will eventually be used for ill will. We have applications that we choose to run on our smartphones that look at us and listen to us and can be viewed by anyone within the corporation that creates that application. And we have given them the right to do this by our acknowledgement that we agree to their terms and conditions without reading them in most cases. I myself seldom read these terms. There are too many pages, and it takes too much time. And you probably find yourself in the same situation. This has to change. Or laws need to be enacted that certain things must be made very clear up front. That if, for example, they're turning on the microphone or camera on your phone, that you have the right to know that immediately before you even install the application. The need for privacy is something that it will require tremendous effort. We know that in America, the NSA, through its PRISM program, has coerced large corporations, Google and Yahoo among them, into providing information on citizenry. It has also tapped, without knowledge, the pathways between major data centers within Google and perhaps within other countries as well. This represents a grave danger to our security and our privacy. And there may be reasons that the government wants to look at its citizenry, and maybe good reasons, but these need to be weighed carefully, and they need to be monitored with oversight. In America, we use executive orders to allow our clandestine or our organizations of information to access information with a court order. These executive orders can be interpreted in any way that the agency chooses. And it's not just the NSA. We know about the NSA because Edward Snowden told us about the NSA. I can assure you that all of our government agencies are doing similar things, legally, accordingly, but without oversight, without monitoring, and in a much broader sense than they were originally intended. And it is the same in every country. Governments are the same everywhere. All governments have power, and power to some extent does corrupt the people in power. We have created these governments by our own choice. We vote people in sometimes. These people that create these governments are human beings. They have fear, and they have jealousy and anger, and all of the faults that each individual has. So our governments, being composed of these people, will also have these faults, only magnified many times. If an individual has a problem with his neighbor, he may yell at the neighbor or, at worst, punch him in the nose. When governments become angry, they destroy entire cities. So we must be careful the power that we give to the government in terms of watching us and giving access to our private lives. Because when we lose that privacy, we lose our humanity. Now the question is, how do we do this protection without destroying our ability to access information? I believe it is because I believe that since we have two aspects to our lives, the public aspect and the private aspect, that the internet must also reflect these two aspects. Now, the internet does not at this time. It is a free-form, flowing, uncontrollable morass of information, and it's wonderful and usable. But I've created a product called Decentral, using my new company, Future Tense, that takes another aspect of the internet that should have been there and creates private networks that are free-flowing and movable to provide the secure aspects of our lives, the private aspects. And I will talk more about this a little later. A number of you have submitted questions that you would like answers to, and I would like to address those now. The first one is, what should the public do to protect themselves in light of the revelations of the NSA and its PRISM program? The problem with government surveillance is that they have the power of law behind them in many cases, or the power of executive order. Before we can protect ourselves completely, we must change those aspects of government. And there are many ways that we do this. We vote people in or out. We sign petitions. We press our representatives to change laws or enact laws that do protect us. And there is a time lag between the awareness of a problem and its solution in most cases when dealing with the government. These solutions must come quickly, however, before things get out of control. When the government can read our private communications to our wives and loved ones, to our children, when we give advice from man to man or from father to son, these have to be private. And if governments reach the point where everything that we say or do is watched, then we have reached the Orwellian state of 1984 and not a pleasant place. So the first is we must change laws and we must change government attitudes toward the collection of information on its citizens. The second thing we have to do is do everything within our power to protect ourselves. Do not ever leave the laptop lid open on your computer when you're at home if you're not using it. Because while it's up, the camera can be turned on and everything happening in the room can be seen. The same thing with your cell phones. When you lay them down, put them face down, not face up. If they're face up, then everything in the room can again likely be seen. Turn them off so that the microphone cannot be turned on. Use software judiciously. If you have an application on your smartphone, read the fine print. We have to start doing that. And we also have to lobby our governments to enact laws that application makers must adhere to. For example, using the microphone, using the camera, access to your private information like your contact list, and there are many, by the way, that you give the right to access your private information. Anything that you have on your computer, they have the right to look at if you agree to their terms and conditions. Things of this nature must be made clear to consumers, else we will have major problems in the future. And then software. Of course, we must use software. And above all, a good encryption technique. Encryption technology is absolutely necessary for our privacy and security as we go forward into the future. Our next question is, should the balkanization of the internet actually take place? Unfortunately, there's little that we can do to prevent it. The balkanization has begun, first with China, and other nations are soon coming, and we have little control over other governments. This is the cause of war, our interference in the affairs of our neighbors. However, we need to have free access to certain information that provides basic human rights. And the first of that is going to be privacy in all cases. Now, balkanization, in the end, if we are not aware of its consequences, could be devastating to the free flow of information and therefore the progress of all society on earth. We must have this free flow. So governments must be aware, number one, of their ability to restrain or contain the information flow across its borders, and number two, its obligations to its citizen to inform the citizenry of events that are useful to the citizenry. So this is a tricky question. How do we do it? Balkanization is coming. We cannot stop that. Everybody has their own political agenda, their own needs or wants or desires for its citizenry. And the internet, being a major element of all functions of government and society these days, is going to become part of this personal interest of governments. So we have to be aware as citizens of what the balkanization could mean and make sure that our government managers and decision makers are also aware of these things. The next question is, do I believe Snowden is a traitor or a patriot? Well, as with all questions of this nature, there are at least two sides and perhaps more. As someone who informed the society, America, the people, me and everyone else, of the intrusion of the government into our private lives, then certainly to the individual, he is a hero. He is someone who told us something we needed to know at great risk to himself. And he chose to run, which was his right, I think. It's He is an individual, and protecting his own freedom, he has the right to make choices, and his choice was to flee. Now, to the government, which is obligated to adhere to the letter of the law, of course, he is a traitor. He has taken information that the American government deemed private and made it public. So where do you balance this? What side do you stand on? I'm certainly glad personally that he told us this. I, of course, knew these things were happening. I have been in the security field for many years, and I am very aware of what the government is doing, having worked with many government programs, including black programs here in America. The black programs are the programs that officially do not exist. So I'm very well aware of what the government can do and is doing. So, but I am unique. Not unique, but certainly among the few that have this privileged information. For most of the American citizenry, this was a surprise. Not a surprise to me, but a surprise to everyone else. For me, I am glad that he did it, and to me, he is a good patriot because as citizens, and we are the creators of our government, as citizens, he did us all a great service. Another question that I've been asked is, has the NSA or any other branch of government, while I was at McAfee or at any other security company, asked me to provide a backdoor or access that is to be used by the government for its own purposes? And also, do I believe that McAfee or Cisco Norton are also involved in cooperation with the NSA? Unfortunately, I cannot speak to any of those. If I did know, I would have known through official means, and my lips have to be sealed. However, I will say that the government reach of all governments is far greater than the individual knows, and in America, much greater. So I can say that anyone who reasons this through and thinks carefully, they will suddenly see that it would be unlikely for many of these countries not to have been approached by one of the clandestine organizations within America. The next question is, do I see India playing a central role in the global security initiative? And to make sure that I answer fully, I'm going to refer to my notes here. India will play a role in the global security scenario as a frontrunner and a contributor to Internet governance, and India has already, number one, leading the way for stronger control of the Internet, something that is extremely necessary in my opinion. India is pushing the way for a centralized and unbiased group to implement governance of the Internet. India is already a key global player in the global security scenario and as a member of the G20. And India had also chaired the Counterterrorism Initiative in 2012. And with the continued strong moves on the international front of this nature, India will continue to prove that it is an indispensable partner in the development of any international governance and global security strategy. The next question, what made me create the interesting videos on my site? Well, that's a difficult question to answer. Number one is I enjoy humor. I enjoy practical jokes, and I also enjoy, more than anything else, making fun of myself. And early in the year, as I had left Belize and rumors were flying around, there were allegations of such absurdity that I thought I would make an equally absurd video playing the part that the press wanted me to play. And so that's the fundamental reason that I created those videos. I know that many of you were hoping to meet me in person and discuss whatever it is, opportunities, projects, seeking advice, and I myself am very sorry that I could not be there in person. However, Mr. Raj Murthy will be taking business cards and contact information for any of you wishing to cooperate with any projects that I'm doing, if you need advice or help or guidance in anything that I can help you with. And thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you next year. I guarantee I will be there. Thank you.